Welcome to Grow Virtually, an online horticultural educational program presented by the Master Gardener Volunteers of Cobb County. Under the guidance of the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension Service, we grow gardeners.
Tonight, who is talking about making your own soil amendment, the why, what, and how of composting, and it's Master Gardener Dennis Esler.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a real long title, Make Your Own Soil Amendments, the why, what, how of composting. And that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. So we're going to make this a very easy math equation. Everybody likes math. So the math equation for composting is this. How do you make dirt from banana peels and worms? It's real simple. You take banana peels, you add worms, and what do you get? You get compost. It's really no more complex than that. What I'm going to hope to do is show you an ideal way to make compost. Some of it sounds complicated, but it's not. The reality is, you pile this stuff up and do nothing, nature will make compost for you. So I'm going to optimize that for you. So we're going to talk about why compost, what to compost, and how to compost. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, why compost? Keeps the environment clean. It reduces landfills. I'm anti-landfill. It enriches the soil. You don't have to go out and spend money buying fertilizer and stuff. You can make your own. So it's economical. It's an effective way to mulch grass, to mulch leaves, to mulch sticks, things like that. And you are going to conserve natural resources because there's no plastic needed. Look at all the plastic bags in that picture. Those took fuel, petroleum products to make those bags. You don't have to do any of that. You can also use that compost for lawn renovation. People pay to get their lawn sanded. Well, you can do it yourself with put a ½ inch of compost covered by a ½ inch of coarse sand. Bingo. You can revitalize your lawn a bit. You can make your own potting soil. Add equal parts of that coarse sand, some regular soil, and your compost. Then you bake it for about a half hour at 130 degrees to kill any weed seeds or anything like that may be in it. And you'll have some really nice, rich potting soil. You don't have to go buy those and haul those big bags from the big box stores. So you got a lot of good reasons why you want to compost. It also prevents eutrophication. So there's a word you can use at your next dinner party, eutrophication. Now, what is that? That's excessive nutrient runoff. So yeah, there's fertilizer in your plants, there's fertilizer in your grass cuttings and such. If that goes down the drain, number one, it's going to block the drains up, but it also causes a dense growth of plant life in the waterways. Remember, even though we are a landlocked city, the city of Atlanta, anything that goes down the drain is going to wind up in eventually the Chattahoochee probably, or one of the other rivers, and then down to the Gulf. So we want to keep that runoff as clean as possible. So let's use composting to help keep it clean. Okay. Another thing you can do while we're on this subject is grass recycling. Let's invent a new word, grass cycling. Simply use a mulching lawnmower. You won't have to bag it. You won't have to go buy those bags from the big box store. You won't have to put them out in the curve. You're going to save landfill capacity. You're going to save time. You're going to save water, and you're going to save money. And you won't have all that grass runoff into the waterways. Grass cycling, if you do it, you'll help to reduce that algae bloom, as you can see here. And this algae bloom will, kill animal life in streams. You don't want to do that. You can also use that mulching lawnmower to mulch those leaves. So if you take those leaves and shred them up with your lawnmower, you have mulch that you can put around your plants to protect your plants from cold weather. By the way, it's getting down below freezing tonight. You need to protect your plants. Just apply 3 to 6 inches of this stuff to the top of the soil. And you also can use it as part of your composting. And we'll tell you about using leaves as an ingredient in just a second. So you're going to make your own leaf mulch. Okay, so what do you need to compost? Two things. You need browns, leaves, twigs, dried grass, paper products, cardboard, things like that. Those are the browns. That gives the carbon. Then you need greens, the kitchen scraps, and green plants, green clippings, grass clippings, things like that. You add them together, you add air, it produces heat, and you're going to get compost out of it. Okay. The organisms that help digest these things and break these things down are already in the soil. Okay, what happens during compost? You have chemical decomposers. Those are the bacteria and such, the fungi, the protozoas, the acetum mycetes that are in the soil already. Those things all act to break down those organic products that you put in your compost bin. These things are decomposing those things all the time. And I said, they're already in your soil and water. So doing that, those physical decomposers, the larger organisms, they chew, they grind, they digest these pieces. These are found at the mid-range temperatures, and we'll talk about the mid-range temperatures in a minute. Earthworms are really important, and those are the most common decomposers. But you also have the other things that you might not think of: the mites, the centipedes, the spiders, the ants, even those aggravating flies. They all help to decompose and physically break down the pieces that you put in your compost pile. So what happens during composting? There's some chemistry going on. There's a certain carbon to nitrogen ratio. Actually, it's like a 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, but don't worry about that. Your browns, which are your dry plants, your leaves, your pine needles, things like that, those are sources of carbon. The greens are the fresher items, the grass clippings, fresh leaves, the vegetable scraps, weeds. Those are all sources of nitrogen. So when you mix carbon and nitrogen, they will produce heat. They will produce the bacteria and such. The decomposers will get in there. They heat up and they decompose for you. So compost materials have carbon and nitrogen. Again, best activity is at 30-to-1. Don't worry about 30-to-1. There's no way you can measure that unless you're a chemist. So don't worry about it. You just balance your brown matter with your green matter. And I have a cheat sheet coming up in a couple slides that's going to tell you about that. The higher the carbon, the longer the composting process is. So nitrogen is what kind of kickstart this. If you need to increase the nitrogen, use grass clippings, or you can use a nitrogen-rich fertilizer. Not much, 1/3 of a cup to 25 square feet. And again, this is an all nitrogen 3400 fertilizer. That will give your compost a little bit of a boost. Now, how do you prepare a compost pile? It's really simple. You need a little bit of size, no less than 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. Maximum height is about 5 feet. And that's just a practical thing. If it gets any higher than 5 feet, you won't be able to turn it. And then the heat and the water will have a hard time penetrating down. You need a very convenient location in your yard. Some people put it in the very backyard. That's fine. But if it's too far out of the way, you'll forget to go put stuff in it. Again, small particles decompose faster. Some people have the luxury of having an electric chipper at home, and they will put their particles through a chipper. If you don't, just cut things into very small particles. If you have branches and stuff, cut it into like 1-inch pieces. The smaller the particles you can get, the faster they will decompose. And you're going to layer your materials, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, this sign will tell you everything you need to know about compost. First of all, for best results, chop them up, layer them, and mix them. Smaller pieces will speed up the process. You start with the browns, layer with the greens, and cap with some more browns. Okay. And then you turn that pile every 2 to 6 weeks. You mix it up, mix it up. And there's a couple different ways to do that. So what are the greens you use? Fruit peels, coffee grounds, eggshells, rice, pasta, plain pasta, no gravy on it, tea bags, vegetables, grass clippings, fresh grass clippings, not brown ones, but green ones, garden vegetable trimmings, again, green, not brown, not dried. So 1/3 greens to 2/3 browns. Browns are where the carbons come from. There's your dried leaves, your twigs. Corn stalks are actually browns. Corn cobs are browns. Tree bark, cardboard, shredded newspaper, wood chips. Just a word about cardboard. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just throw my Amazon boxes in there. Fine, but tear them up into small pieces and remove the plastic tape. Plastic tape does not decompose. So unless you want a compost pile full of plastic tape, please take that plastic tape off. Do not add meat, bones, or seafood products. They will attract rats or mice or other vermin. You don't want that. You don't want oily foods or heavily processed foods. You don't want weed seeds. These are going in your planting bed. You don't want the seeds. You don't want diseased plants. Again, don't spread the disease. You don't want big pieces of wood. You don't want pressure treated wood. You want just raw wood. You do not want pet waste. The only exception to the pet waste is horse manure that's been sitting for at least a year. And I don't think you got any of that around. So no pet waste. If you run into trouble, if it smells, if you have flies, add some browns. If it's too wet, add some browns. And I'll tell you in a minute how to find out how to tell if it's too wet. If it's not heating up, add a little water if it's dry and add more greens. That will heat up the temperature. So the layering method. Here, someone is constructing a bin with just 3 pallets. Very simple to do. You put the twigs and small branches on the bottom to promote air circulation. You see they're not packed real tight. You can get air up in there. You got to have the air. Then you add some browns on top. And I see some pine needles and some leaves and some small twigs, things like that. And you see the watering can there. They put a little water on that too. Then you put your greens, green material, hay, straw, things like that. All fresh green stuff. Then you're ready. You could put a little more brown on top of that. Now, how do you tell if it's wet enough? Use the squeeze test. All you do is take a handful of that stuff, and some people say they don't like to put their hands in it, wear a glove. Squeeze it together. It should be about like a sponge. It should not drip out any water. If it does, too wet, add browns. If it crumbles apart, it's too dry, add some water to it. You get the feel of this very quickly after you do it a little bit. The moisture will speed up the composition. And again, brown is kind of your moisture control. If it's too wet, you add browns. How to maintain the pile. Turn it once or twice a month. Turn center to edge because the center is where the heat builds up. So you want to kind of move it around a little bit. You can also use a 3-chamber bin, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. All you do is move it from one chamber to the next, then one chamber to the next. So the one chamber will have your raw stuff, the middle chamber will have your stuff that's really working, and then the other chamber will have the ready to use stuff. Keep it damp, and ideal temperature is 110 to 160 degrees. Some people use a long thermometer to check it. You can do that if you want. Stick your hand in it. Not your body is 98 degrees, so it feels warmer than your body. It's warmer than 98 or 100 degrees. If it can't keep your hand in it, it's probably up to 150, 160 degrees. Again, this is not rocket science. It's pretty simple stuff. Once you get used to doing it, you'll be able to tell how your compost bin is doing. When is it finished? It's going to be black, crumbly, sponge-like. It's going to smell kind of earthy. You won't be able to recognize any real particles, and that pile will have shrunk to about half its size. This can take, in an ideal situation, as little as 8 weeks, but typically it takes months, 6 to 8 months sometimes. This is what the finished product is going to look like. You got some pretty good small particles. You got a couple larger particles, but in general, it's a pretty fine mix of product, and you can't really recognize much in there. If you have a lot of time on your hands, you can screen this stuff. This was just a screen made of hardware cloth and a frame, and they have been sifting it through to remove the oversized pieces. Not necessary, but certainly you can do it. Again, the smaller the piece, the faster the compost will produce. Troubleshooting again, if it smells, add some more browns. And I'll add to this, if you see fruit flies, add some more browns. Is it too wet? Add some more browns. If it's not heating up to that 110 to 160 temperature, add water if it's dry, or add more greens, or both. Okay, it's very simple to maintain once you get it going. Now, what do you do to build a structure to compost? It's really simple. It can be as simple as a pile or a pit. You can have a 3-chamber composting bin. You can do a composting hoop. You can make your own bin out of trash cans or a 55-gallon drum. You can use a wood pallet, as I showed you in one of the early pictures. You can buy a commercial tumbler, or there's some plastic store-bought compost bins. This one website, planetneutral.com, does have some commercial composting structures. Obviously, Amazon has them. You can also find them at a lot of the big box stores. So the simple thing, heap composting, no container necessary. Just pile everything on the ground, directly on the ground, and you can just keep adding things immediately, or you can stockpile them. So that's a very simple way to do it. Or the 3-chambered bins. The ones pictured here look like about 3 by 4, about 3 feet high. At Reconnecting, our bins are 4 by 4 by 4. They have the wire sides so that you get a lot of air circulation. You can see that far bin, the left-hand bin, has those fresh greens and browns in it. We'll let that sit for a bit, for weeks. Then we'll move it to the center bin, let that sit for weeks, move that to the right side bin, and then take the left bin and move that to the center. So you're always moving things from bin to kind of keep things going. You can use a compost hoop, which is nothing more than a piece of wire that's bent in the sides of a hoop about 3 feet across. This is really easy. It keeps things tidy because you don't have spillover. And when it's time to flip your bin or mix your bin up, all you do is unhook the wire, put it in a different spot, and move the pile back into the wire. That way you've kind of turned things upside down and mixed it all up. Really simple, really inexpensive way to do it. You can use a trash can, like I said, trash can with a tight fitting lid, or a 55-gallon drum if you can get one, cut the holes in the sides and the bottom so you get that air circulation, sit it up on some bricks or blocks, and then all you got to do is close it and roll it to mix the contents. Just make sure you don't put too much in it so it won't move around. So just roll it around. This will also keep the flies or whatever, any smells to a minimum. Of course, if you're doing it right, you won't have the flies or the smells. Or tumblers. I've seen these. I don't know how much they cost, but I know this is another option. You put them in and just kind of tumble them around every week or every couple of weeks, whatever the instructions say. This is low maintenance. It's pet proof, no odors, no pests. It makes it go faster and keeps the compost damp and warm. Very simple if you have the room and you want to buy something like that. Or you can have these plastic compost bins. These have air vents all around them. You can store them anywhere. It kind of hides the waste, so it doesn't look too bad. And it's made of recycled plastic, which is another plus. In summary, you can be environmentally responsible by composting. This is very beneficial to the soil, the ecosystem, to our waterways. It's easy, it's convenient, it's economical, and it's something that any gardener can do. Now, where do you find out more? And this is in the chat. We all are familiar with the UGA EDU publication website. Circular 816 is all about composting and mulching. Or you consult the EPA.gov website. Again, just go to EPA.gov and you can search for recycling or home composting. You always can call the Master Gardener Help Desk at the Extension Service, or visit us on South Cobb Drive.
Thank you, Dennis.
We hope that you will find our information informative and helpful. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.